Most people around the world celebrate Christmas on December 25th. It's written on calendars, used in movies, and baked into holiday traditions. But when you step back and look at the history closely, something strange appears. No early Christian writer ever recorded this date. No ancient text mentions it. And for the first generations of believers, celebrating the birth itself wasn't even a priority. So how did December 25th become the biggest holiday in the world? And does the historical Jesus actually have anything to do with that date? Today, we're exploring the story from the ground up, using history, culture, early writings, astronomy, and everyday life in ancient Judea to follow the real trail of clues. By the end, the picture becomes surprisingly clear, and it's far more interesting than the familiar winter scenes we're used to. The earliest texts that describe the birth of Jesus give several details, but not a single direct date. They talk about the place, the family, the visitors, the journey, and the political context. But the writers never thought to assign a month or a day. Instead, they provide descriptions of shepherds watching their flocks outdoors at night. In that region, this detail opens a window into the natural rhythm of seasons. Shepherds typically kept their flocks outside only during the warmer months when the pastures had enough food and the nights weren't dangerously cold. Numerous cultural and agricultural studies of the area show that by late autumn, flocks were usually brought into protective enclosures. This makes outdoor night watching in late December unlikely, though not impossible during unusually mild years. Still, if someone today had only this one clue, shepherds in open fields at night, they would naturally place the event far closer to spring or early summer. Another detail often overlooked is the mention of a population census. In the ancient world, census activities were not random. They generally took place during seasons when travel was manageable. While ancient administrations varied widely, several historical documents from the broader Mediterranean world show a preference for warmer seasons when roads were safer, weather was predictable, and agricultural pressures were lighter. Winter travel was inconvenient and sometimes dangerous. Most families stayed home, maintaining livestock and managing household survival tasks. For officials responsible for collecting data, winter movement made their job more difficult. This doesn't prove that a census could not happen in December, but it makes a winter date far less practical. Early Christian communities themselves provide another major clue. For the first couple of centuries, followers of Jesus didn't celebrate his birth at all. In their cultural world, birthdays were not central events, and some groups even saw birthday celebrations as belonging to other traditions. Their focus was overwhelmingly on teachings, community life, and events surrounding the end of Jesus' life rather than the beginning. Writings from the first generations after the original disciples make this clear. The birth narrative held meaning, but the date itself wasn't considered important enough to record or celebrate. The first appearance of December 25th arrives much later, centuries after the time of Jesus. When Christian communities began organizing yearly calendars of important days, they started assigning dates to major events. One of the earliest known records placing the birth on December 25th comes from the 4th century, during a time when the faith was becoming more structured and more connected across distant regions. But even then, not everyone agreed. Some communities preferred early January. Others had entirely different proposals. What matters is that the December date seems to appear suddenly in the surviving writings, with no chain of documentation leading all the way back to the first witnesses. Many modern explanations focus on an interesting theory, that early Christian leaders placed Christmas on December 25th to align with festivals already happening in the Roman world around the winter solstice. It's a popular idea because it makes intuitive sense. People were already gathering, celebrating, and marking the return of longer days. Choosing the same moment for a new celebration would make adoption easier. However, the situation isn't that simple. Some early Christian writers opposed aligning holy days with other traditions. Others believed dates could be calculated based on symbolic interpretations of ancient events rather than matching surrounding cultures. Meanwhile, the Roman world itself had shifting festival calendars that varied by region and period. So the idea of a direct replacement is appealing but not definitively proven. What is clear is that symbolism around light returning to the world was powerful, and December 25th naturally fit that theme.
Science adds another lens. Researchers who study ancient skies have tried estimating when the birth could have taken place based on astronomical phenomena described in early writings about a notable star. Different theories propose planetary alignments, novas, or comets. Using well-studied astronomical cycles, some of these events can be simulated backward with impressive accuracy. Interestingly, several of these proposed sky events cluster around seasons other than winter. They often appear in spring or autumn, sometimes aligning with periods when shepherds would indeed have been outdoors with their flocks. While astronomy cannot pinpoint the exact birthday, it provides seasonal indicators that again lean away from late December. Everyday life in ancient Judea offers even more clues. Livestock patterns, weather records collected by modern climatologists, and agricultural calendars passed down through local traditions all point toward a consistent pattern. By winter, outdoor work with animals slowed dramatically. Nights were chilly, rainfall increased, and families focused on maintaining warmth and food supplies. Shepherds sleeping outdoors with flocks was a warm season activity. This detail doesn't prove a specific date, but it narrows the seasonal window significantly. Taking all of this together, the missing date in early writings, the shepherding clues, the census practicality, and the astronomical proposals, a winter birth becomes historically unlikely. Yet December 25th still became the global date. So the real question is, why did that specific day rise above all others? To answer that, we need to explore the cultural and symbolic world of the early centuries, where numbers, seasons, and spiritual themes often carried deeper meaning than concrete historical accuracy. In the early centuries, many thinkers within the growing Christian world believed that key moments in a person's life were spiritually connected. Some writers argued that great figures in history were conceived and died on the same date of the year. This symbolic idea, found in several ancient traditions, suggests a kind of cosmic symmetry. Based on certain interpretations circulating in those times, some groups concluded that the date associated with the end of Jesus' life fell in late March. If conception was believed to occur on the same date, then 9 months later brings us to late December. This method of calculation wasn't scientific in the modern sense, but it was meaningful to people of that era. It offered a symbolic logic that connected life, death, and divine purpose in a unified framework. These symbolic interpretations help explain why December 25th began appearing in recorded calendars. Not because someone uncovered a forgotten document or traced a family memory back to the 1st century, but because the date carried a type of poetic significance within the worldview of that period. This symbolic approach also explains why some communities preferred early January, based on similar calculations using other ancient interpretive traditions. Ultimately, December 25th gained more traction, especially in the Western regions, and gradually became the dominant date through influence, organization, and cultural diffusion. As this date spread, it became surrounded by traditions drawn from both local customs and older symbolic practices. Winter celebrations involving greenery, candles, feasts, and gatherings long predated the adoption of December 25th as a Christian celebration. Once the date was established, these customs naturally blended into the new holiday. The evergreens symbolized endurance through the cold season. Candles represented warmth and the triumph of light during the darkest part of the year. Feasting was a universal way of facing harsh months with communal strength. None of these needed specific endorsement from ancient writings. They fit the emotional and seasonal rhythm of the time. Over centuries, these practices accumulated until Christmas became a rich tapestry of symbols from many cultures, far beyond the original story. It's important to clarify that none of this diminishes the significance of the Nativity for those who celebrate it. Understanding the history allows the celebration to be appreciated even more fully. Traditions evolve, and meaning isn't limited to literal dates.
The value of a holiday often lies in its ability to bring people together, highlight hope, and anchor shared stories. December 25th simply became the moment when those themes converged most powerfully. Before closing the historical investigation, it's worth exploring the Star of Bethlehem one more time. For centuries, scholars, scientists, and curious observers have proposed different explanations. Some point to planetary alignments recorded in ancient cultures, such as conjunctions of bright planets that would appear unusually striking in the sky. Others consider the possibility of exploding stars, which could have momentarily appeared as vivid new lights. Modern astronomical tools make it possible to simulate the sky across thousands of years. When these simulations are compared with historical clues, several potential sky events line up with years that many historians consider likely for the birth. These astronomical events, however, cluster in seasons that align with shepherding practices, further reinforcing the idea that the birth occurred during a warmer period, not the deep winter. Another piece of the puzzle comes from climate research. Using data from tree rings, soil records, and natural archives, modern climatologists can reconstruct temperature and weather patterns from specific regions across several thousand years. These reconstructions show that winters in the Judean area during the early 1st century were typically cold and sometimes much colder than today. Nighttime temperatures frequently dropped low enough that sleeping outdoors without significant protection was dangerous. This makes the description of shepherds staying with their flocks at night more consistent with late spring, summer, or early autumn. Again, none of this gives a precise birth date, but it narrows the range enough to make late December an unlikely candidate. Turning back to the early Christian world, the gradual adoption of December 25th also reveals how communities organize their annual cycles. As Christianity spread across cities and regions, leaders looked for ways to standardize practice. A unified calendar helped connect distant communities, creating shared moments of celebration. December 25th was strategically placed near the end of the year, aligning with reflections on renewal, hope, and spiritual light. It became a symbolic anchor, reinforced by its connection to the returning sun and the lengthening of days. Cultural adaptation played a large role too. In areas with pronounced winters, the combination of cold weather, limited daylight, and community gatherings created a natural environment for a meaningful celebration. People already needed warmth, companionship, and reminders of hope. When the nativity story was placed in this seasonal context, it took on a deeper emotional resonance. Over time, December 25th didn't just represent a historical proposal, it became a cultural necessity. By the medieval period, the date was firmly established across most of Europe. Traditions multiplied. Dramatic reenactments of the Nativity, music, special meals, decorated homes, and rituals involving light and greenery. Many of these customs had distant roots in earlier seasonal practices, but they were reinterpreted through a new lens. Instead of replacing older traditions, the holiday absorbed them and reshaped their meaning. The winter celebration of hope, light, and renewal had found a permanent form. Meanwhile, regions with different climates adapted Christmas in unique ways. In warmer areas where winter didn't evoke survival challenges, the celebration took on a different tone. The symbolism of light still mattered, but greenery and candles played a smaller role. Other traditions developed instead: processions, music, and community gatherings shaped by local culture. This flexibility shows how powerful the core themes of the Nativity became. The celebration no longer depended on a specific climate or older seasonal rituals. Its meaning could adapt to any culture and any part of the world. All of this leads to a key point. December 25th became the global date not because it is historically precise, but because it evolved into the moment when the story, the symbolism, and the season aligned most powerfully. It is a fusion of history, interpretation, tradition, and cultural adaptation.
The historical Jesus was almost certainly not born on that day, but the celebration carries deeper meaning than literal accuracy. With all major clues laid out, it becomes easier to understand why the early communities eventually settled on December 25th. Not as a historical timestamp, but as a symbolic declaration. For many thinkers of the time, the birth represented the arrival of spiritual light into the world. Positioning the celebration during the darkest period of the year created a powerful metaphor. When days reached their shortest point and the sun seemed weakest, the story of a new beginning felt especially meaningful. The connection between natural cycles and spiritual themes was intentional. People living in ancient societies were far more attuned to the seasons than modern urban populations. The length of daylight mattered. The cold months shaped daily life. When nights stretched long, communities sought stories and gatherings that offered reassurance. Placing the nativity at this moment gave the story a universal emotional anchor. Practical considerations also mattered. After harvest season ended, families had more time available for gatherings. In agricultural societies, the end of autumn marked a brief pause between the completion of the year's work and the challenges of the cold season. This pause allowed communities to come together, share food, and participate in celebrations. The holiday fitted naturally into this rhythm. It was easier to travel short distances, easier to rest, and easier to prepare special meals. A celebration held in the middle of heavy planting or harvesting periods would have been far less convenient. Over the centuries, Christmas became woven into the cultural fabric of societies across continents. The date itself became inseparable from the holiday's identity. Even when historians later pointed out that the original date was unknown, the symbolic power of December 25th remained stronger than any argument for seasonal accuracy. The holiday had grown beyond its origins, taking on new layers of meaning as different cultures contributed their traditions, foods, music, and customs. As the holiday crossed borders, it encountered new climates and environments. In the southern hemisphere, December falls in the middle of summer. Yet even there, the holiday retained its themes of light, joy, and renewal. Instead of snow and winter imagery, celebrations adapted to warm weather, sunlight, and outdoor gatherings. This global flexibility highlights an important point. The essence of the holiday is not dependent on winter at all. The symbolism of light emerging in darkness transcends physical seasons. It reflects a universal human theme, finding hope during difficult times. Returning once more to history, it is notable that early Christian writers rarely argued that December 25th was the literal date of the birth. Instead, they emphasized what the event represented. Their discussions focused on meaning, not chronology. For them, the celebration was a reminder of spiritual significance, not a historical reenactment. This approach allowed the holiday to flourish even in the absence of historical certainty. In many ways, December 25th functions the same way today. It provides a moment for reflection in the middle of winter for many cultures. It offers a break from routine, a chance to gather with loved ones, and a symbolic reminder of new beginnings. Even people who do not attend religious services often find comfort in the warmth, generosity, and togetherness associated with the day. These qualities have grown naturally from centuries of cultural development. No single source defined them. They evolved organically as communities shaped the holiday according to their needs and values. The debate over the historical accuracy of December 25th often overlooks a deeper truth. Traditions are not static. They are living expressions of what a community cares about. When a date holds emotional and cultural significance, it becomes meaningful regardless of its origins. December 25th has endured because it resonates with people. It aligns with the human experience of seeking light, hope, and renewal during challenging seasons of life. Understanding the difference between historical fact and symbolic tradition does not take away from the importance of the holiday. Instead, it adds richness.
It allows people to appreciate both the story's ancient roots and the cultural journey that shaped it into the celebration known worldwide today. Knowing that the exact birth date is unknown can even make the story feel more universal. It is not tied to a single moment in time, but opens a space for reflection that transcends geography, climate, and calendar systems. And there is something else worth noting. While historians and researchers point to spring or early autumn as the most likely seasons for the actual birth, they also emphasize that the earliest followers were far more concerned with meaning than dates. For them, the deeper significance of the story was independent of when it happened. That perspective is still relevant today. Whether one views the holiday through a religious lens, a cultural lens, or simply as a moment of annual reflection, its value does not depend on pinpointing a date 2,000 years after the event. Bringing all the strands together, the story becomes clear. The historical birth likely occurred during a warmer season. Early communities did not celebrate it. Centuries later, symbolic interpretations led certain groups to place the conception in spring, and therefore the birth in late December. This lined up with seasonal themes of light overcoming darkness. The date then absorbed local customs and winter traditions, evolving into the global holiday now known as Christmas. Through this long journey, December 25th became less about historical precision and more about cultural meaning. And that meaning continues to grow and change as communities around the world reinterpret the celebration for their own times. Across the world today, the celebration of Christmas reflects layers of history stretching back thousands of years. Some of these layers come from the original story of the birth itself, while others come from the cultures that later adopted December 25th as the annual moment of celebration. This blending of history and meaning is what gives the holiday its unique character. It is not a frozen time capsule from the ancient world. It is a living, growing tradition shaped by generations. Understanding this evolution does not weaken the holiday. Instead, it brings clarity to how people across time have found hope and connection in the story. The further we step into the medieval period, the more clearly we see how the holiday adapted to local conditions. In northern regions where winter was harsh and daylight scarce, symbols of warmth and survival became prominent. Greenery, candles, fires, and communal feasts held deep significance. These traditions did not originate from the earliest Christian communities, but they became powerful expressions of the season's emotional needs. Over time, they fused with the nativity narrative to create what people recognize today as the spirit of Christmas. In southern regions with milder climates, different elements took hold. Public processions, music, theatrical presentations, and large communal gatherings became central. Instead of surviving winter, the emphasis shifted toward public celebration, generosity, and hospitality. While the symbols differed from place to place, the underlying themes remained consistent: renewal, hope, and unity. This reveals an important truth about the holiday. It is not tied to a specific culture or climate. It adapts, reshapes, and grows according to the needs of the communities that celebrate it. Moving into the early modern era, new traditions emerged that further transformed December 25th. The exchange of gifts, for example, became increasingly common in certain parts of Europe. While rooted in older customs of generosity, the practice grew significantly over several centuries. Storytelling traditions evolved as well, adding new characters and new symbolism. None of these developments had direct links to the historical birth, but all of them contributed to the emotional landscape of the holiday. Through these transformations, the date became more deeply associated with kindness, family, and reflection. By the time the holiday spread globally through travel, trade, and cultural exchange, December 25th had become much more than a memorial of the birth of Jesus. It had become a cultural phenomenon that carried different meanings for different groups. Some viewed it as a sacred religious observance, others as a family tradition, and still others as an annual moment for generosity and rest. The holiday's ability to carry multiple layers of meaning is part of its enduring strength. Modern historical research has confirmed that the earliest followers of Jesus almost certainly did not know or preserve the exact date of the birth. The absence of a recorded date in early writings is not a flaw. It simply reflects the priorities of those communities. They focused on teachings, communal life, and moral practice. They were not concerned with maintaining a birthday record. When later communities tried to determine a date, they used symbolic interpretation and cultural logic rather than historical documents. This explains why December 25th emerged so late and yet spread so quickly. Today, understanding the history of December 25th provides perspective. It shows how a tradition can grow from a combination of symbolism, seasonal meaning, and cultural adaptation. It invites reflection on how communities create rituals that speak to their needs. And it highlights the difference between literal historical events and the symbolic power of stories. This distinction matters because it allows people to appreciate the holiday in multiple ways. Whether celebrated as a religious observance or a cultural tradition, the date offers an opportunity to pause, reflect, and reconnect with the themes of hope and renewal. For many people, one of the most meaningful aspects of Christmas is the sense of light overcoming darkness. This theme resonates far beyond its seasonal context. It speaks to universal human experience, facing difficult moments, enduring challenges, and finding a path forward. The symbolism of light carries spiritual, emotional, and psychological significance. Even in modern times, people instinctively recognize the value of marking a moment of hope during the darkest period of the year. The holiday functions as a reminder that renewal is possible, even when the world feels cold and uncertain. From a cultural perspective, the adoption of December 25th shows how societies use storytelling to make sense of time. Placing a celebration at the end of the year creates a natural
point of reflection. People look back on the past, consider their experiences, and prepare mentally for a new beginning. The Nativity story fits beautifully into this rhythm. It highlights birth, transformation, and promise, themes that align with the emotional landscape of year's end. This is one reason why the holiday has proven so durable, even as societies change. In modern psychology, traditions like Christmas are recognized as stabilizing forces in community life. Annual rituals help maintain continuity and support well-being. They provide moments of expectation, comfort, and connection. Even when people do not share the same beliefs, they often share the same desire for closeness, rest, and meaning. The history of December 25th illustrates how holidays can unify communities across time and culture. It also shows that meaning does not depend solely on historical precision. A tradition can be meaningful because people give it meaning. Returning to the Nativity narrative, the details that matter most, the setting, the humility, the message of hope, are not tied to a specific date. They are tied to the values the story expresses. Whether one approaches the narrative through faith, history, or a blend of both, its impact remains powerful because of these universal themes. The date of December 25th simply became the vessel through which these themes could be celebrated. The historical uncertainty enhances rather than diminishes the story's universality. Without a fixed date, the message becomes timeless, available to all who find value in it.
As the modern world grew increasingly interconnected, Christmas evolved once again. In the 19th and 20th centuries, new cultural influences reshaped the holiday into the form recognized today. Advances in printing and mass media introduced widely shared imagery, decorated trees, seasonal songs, winter landscapes, and festive gatherings. These images spread rapidly across continents, reinforcing December 25th as a global cultural moment. Even in regions without winter, the symbolic language of light and renewal continued to resonate. People adopted the holiday because its themes aligned with universal human experiences. The rise of modern communication expanded the reach of Christmas even further. Literature, theater, and eventually film placed the holiday at the center of countless stories. These stories emphasized compassion, personal transformation, family unity, and the rediscovery of meaning. They were not historical retellings of the Nativity, but cultural reflections inspired by it. They showed how the holiday could serve as a backdrop for emotional narratives that had little connection to ancient chronology. Through these portrayals, Christmas became both a reflection of tradition and a canvas for new stories. Meanwhile, researchers and historians continued exploring the question of the actual birth date of Jesus. Their approach combined textual analysis, historical context, archaeological evidence, and scientific methods. Although none of these disciplines could produce an exact date, the convergence of clues pointed overwhelmingly toward a warmer season. Excavations provided information on ancient housing, climate patterns, and daily life. Comparative studies of administrative practices in the Roman world clarified how censuses were conducted. Agricultural calendars preserved in historical sources helped determine when shepherds were likely to stay outdoors with their flocks. Each thread reinforced the broader conclusion: December was a symbolic choice, not a historical claim. Astronomy added a particularly fascinating dimension to this research. Using planetarium software and astronomical calculations, scientists mapped the skies of the first century in great detail. They identified significant celestial events that occurred around the time many historians estimate for the birth. Some proposed that a bright planetary conjunction could have appeared as a single remarkable star. Others pointed to long-tailed comets recorded in ancient cultures. Still others considered sudden stellar explosions that would have produced striking new points of light. Although none of these theories can be confirmed with absolute certainty, they demonstrate how the natural world may have contributed to the story. What they also show is that most of these celestial events aligned with periods of the year outside of winter. Understanding these scientific and historical insights provides a richer view of how traditions develop. Rather than anchoring meaning solely in factual accuracy, communities throughout history have built their rituals around symbolic resonance. A date like December 25th becomes significant because it speaks to the emotional landscape of the season. It offers warmth in cold months, hope in times of darkness, and connection when isolation feels strongest. The Nativity story's message of renewal aligns perfectly with these seasonal realities, making the date a natural home for the celebration regardless of historical precision. The development of Christmas also illustrates how different cultures integrate new traditions without erasing their histories. When the holiday entered various regions, people adapted it to fit their own identities. In some places, traditional songs blended with new melodies. In others, long-standing festivals merged with Christian themes. The holiday absorbed local symbolism, creating hybrid expressions of meaning. This process of blending has occurred countless times throughout history. It reflects the way communities preserve continuity while embracing new ideas. In recent decades, the global nature of the holiday has become even more apparent. People from different backgrounds participate in the celebration, sometimes for religious reasons and sometimes for cultural ones. The emphasis on generosity, reflection, and connection resonates across belief systems. Communities use the holiday as a moment to set aside differences, focus on shared values, and cultivate peace. Even individuals who do not practice any faith may value the season for its sense of renewal and togetherness. Understanding this broad appeal requires recognizing that the meaning of Christmas has always been larger than any single historical question. While the exact date of the birth remains unknown, the themes of the story, humility, hope, compassion, new beginnings, speak to people across time and culture. December 25th became the global day of celebration.
Celebration because it provided a setting where these themes could flourish. The date offered symbolic alignment with the rhythm of the seasons, and communities across centuries shaped the holiday into an expression of their deepest values. The journey of December 25th from an unrecorded date to a global celebration highlights the power of symbolism in human life. People naturally create rituals that reflect their experiences, challenges, and aspirations. When a story resonates deeply, they weave it into their annual rhythms. They attach meaning to the seasons, the cycles of nature, and the transitions between years. Christmas developed through this universal human process. Its timing reflects the way people seek hope during difficult moments and celebrate renewal as days begin to lengthen. Looking back across 2,000 years, it becomes clear that the meaning of Christmas does not rest on pinpointing an exact moment in history. Instead, it rests on the cumulative layers of tradition, culture, and community that surround the celebration. December 25th marks a symbolic turning point, the moment when stories of hope confront the darkest time of the year. Whether or not it aligns with the historical birth, it has become a powerful reminder of the values people cherish most.
All of this leads to the final question: was Jesus actually born on December 25th? Based on every historical clue, the answer is almost certainly no. The earliest communities preserved no date. The seasonal details in the narrative point to warmer months. Records of ancient censuses support travel during practical seasons. Climate reconstructions show chilly winters that were unsuitable for outdoor shepherding. Astronomical events proposed as candidates for the Star of Bethlehem align with spring or autumn. And early Christian writers who eventually placed the birth in late December did so for symbolic reasons rather than historical ones. Yet this conclusion does not undermine the significance of the holiday. December 25th remains meaningful because of what it represents. It is the symbolic moment when communities around the world pause to reflect on themes of renewal, hope, generosity, and light. The date became important not because of historical accuracy, but because it offered emotional and spiritual resonance. People across centuries used it as a way to confront darkness, both literal and metaphorical, with stories of transformation and compassion. Understanding this distinction allows the holiday to take on an even richer meaning. It becomes clear that the celebration is not confined to a single moment in history. It is an ongoing expression of values that speak to the human experience. Whether one approaches the holiday through faith, culture, or simple reflection, its depth comes from its symbolism, not its precision. December 25th functions as a lantern in the middle of winter, illuminating stories and traditions that have grown for nearly 2 millennia. The themes at the heart of the Nativity, the humility of the setting, the message of peace, the hope for renewal, resonate strongly in a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain. They remind people of the importance of compassion in daily life. They inspire families and communities to come together, set aside their differences, and focus on what truly matters. These values remain powerful regardless of historical dating. Looking forward, the holiday will continue to evolve. New traditions will emerge, old ones will shift, and communities will reinterpret the celebration in ways that reflect their own needs and cultures. But the core message will remain. Even in the darkest moments, there is room for light. Even in difficult times, there is space for generosity. Even when the past is uncertain, the future can carry hope. December 25th has become the collective moment when societies acknowledge these truths together. So while the historical birth likely occurred at a different time of year, the celebration on December 25th remains a vivid and meaningful tradition. It is a testament to the power of stories to transcend time. It reflects the way communities use ritual to bring order to the year. And it shows that meaning often grows from symbolism, not from precise dates. The holiday endures because it speaks to something universal, the desire for renewal, connection, and light in the midst of darkness. That is why, even with all the historical evidence pointing elsewhere, the world continues to gather on December 25th to celebrate a story that has shaped countless lives. The story of how December 25th became the day of celebration is ultimately a story of humanity itself. It reveals how people across history have looked for meaning, created traditions, and shared moments of hope. It shows how symbols can become stronger than facts, and how communities can build rituals that outlast the circumstances that created them. Whether celebrated in winter or summer, with snow or with sunlight, the holiday remains a reminder that renewal is possible, that compassion matters, and that shared stories can bring people together across time and culture. And so the journey comes full circle. The date may not match the historical birth, but the meaning has only grown richer. December 25th stands today not as a precise record, but as a symbol shaped by centuries of interpretation, tradition, and human longing. It is a moment when the world pauses, reflects, and embraces the enduring message of light in darkness. That message, more than any date on a calendar, is what continues to make the holiday powerful for millions of people around the globe. The story of how December 25th became the day of celebration is ultimately a story of humanity itself. It reveals how people across history have looked for meaning, created traditions, and shared moments of hope. It shows how symbols can become stronger than facts, and how communities can build rituals that outlast the circumstances that created them. Whether celebrated in winter or summer, with snow or with sunlight, the holiday remains a reminder that renewal is possible, that compassion matters, and that shared stories can bring people together across time and culture. And so the journey comes full circle. The date may not match the historical birth, but the meaning has only grown richer. December 25th stands today not as a precise record, but as a symbol shaped by centuries of interpretation, tradition, and human longing. It is a moment when the world pauses, reflects, and embraces the enduring message of light in darkness. That message, more than any date on a calendar, is what continues to make the holiday powerful for millions of people around the globe.